Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is part 2 of my series on how I believe that modern militaries would be able to take down the Rumbling from Attack on Titan. Today, I'm going to be covering how I believe that modern navies could be used to help beat back the Rumbling. Quick disclaimer, I'm not going to be covering ship-based aircraft and helicopters today, as that would spoil the next video. Speaking of spoilers, this video will contain massive spoilers for the show Attack on Titan, so be warned. In my opinion, the coolest looking scene from Attack on Titan, at least the later season, is the last stand of the combined fleets of the world against the Rumbling. Every single major warship the nations of the world could summon, fighting to the last against an overwhelming enemy. Unfortunately, the battle against the Rumbling didn't go so well, and if modern navies used the same tactics that the combined fleet used against the Rumbling, they'd do even worse. They'd be cooked, both figuratively and literally, as modern warships don't have the armor that older warships had. Naval strategy has changed a lot since the days of the pre-dreadnoughts seen in Attack on Titan. Modern warships, for the most part, have traded heavy gun armament for advanced missiles, and abandoned armor entirely in the face of advanced anti-ship missiles and torpedoes. In the event of a Rumbling, it would be a good idea for all ships to get out of the Rumbling's path as soon as possible, because if the fleets of our world escaped being launched and or melted by the Rumbling, they would be able to deal a lot of damage, though not in the ways you might think. Another quick disclaimer, I am making all these statements with the assumptions that ships will not line up and wait for the Rumbling to overrun them, and that the commanders of the world's navies will keep their ships clear of the direct path of the Rumbling and opt to engage the Titans as they surface and make landfall from the sides and flank of the Rumbling. The warships seen in Attack on Titan are nearly identical to real-life warships from the early 20th century. In fact, one of the ships seen is an exact recreation of the early Imperial Japanese battleship Mikasa. I don't know how to pronounce it exactly, but it's a nice Easter egg. These ships had a lot more heavy guns than modern warships, but modern warships have superior fire control systems and accuracy, making them, in the long run, more deadly against Titans. There are a ton of different kinds of warships in use in modern-day navies. Aircraft carriers, helicopter carriers, amphibious assault ships, battle cruisers, corvettes, destroyers, frigates, fast attack craft, gunboats, landing craft, literal combat ships, mine layers, mine hunters, mine countermeasures vessels, minesweepers, missile boats, patrol boats, patrol torpedo boats, submarines, ballistic missile submarines, attack submarines. And that's not even counting the different types of ships used by Coast Guards. For the sake of simplicity, I'm going to be dividing all these different types of warships into 4 general categories. These 4 categories are riverine and coastal vessels, blue water vessels, naval aviation vessels, and amphibious warfare vessels. The first category, which is coastal and riverine vessels, will include smaller vessels, like patrol boats, small fast attack craft and missile boats, some corvettes, mine warfare vessels, etc. These ships are generally armed with light autocannon, heavy machine guns, some have anti-tank guided missile launchers, others have rocket launchers, and some even have heavier cannon. These vessels are unique as they will be able to fight Titans in rivers, lakes, and shallower water, as well as off the coasts with larger ships if need be. These will be the only vessels that will be able to retreat inland from ports, or consistently combat the Rumbling from inland waters. Blue water vessels, on the other hand, are larger warships that need the open ocean to maneuver effectively. This category includes ships like destroyers, corvettes, cruisers, frigates, and everything else that is too big to sail inland and needs the open ocean. These ships are heavily armed with large caliber cannon, autocannon, and close-in weapon systems. They also have very good fire control systems, similar to that of tanks and other armored vehicles. The next category is naval aviation vessels, such as aircraft carriers, helicopter carriers, and some amphibious assault ships. These ships can carry fixed-wing aircraft and helicopters. Naval aviation vessels will be critical as they will allow for helicopters and certain types of aircraft to operate from close proximity to the Rumbling without the threat of having ground bases being overrun. These ships do carry some gun armament, however, it is not wise to get close to the Rumbling with these high-value ships. The final category that I'll be covering are amphibious warfare ships. These do have some overlap with the previous category, however, I mean ships that are meant to support amphibious landings. These can carry smaller boats, landing craft, vehicles, and infantry, which can also contribute against the rumbling. These ships will also be very important as they allow for the redeployment of ground forces to safer locations that they can engage the rumbling from. Now, I'm sure you all are wondering, what sort of weapons will these modern warships be using in this hypothetical scenario? And I'm sure a few of you are wondering, why haven't I mentioned missiles at all? Well, I'm going to be honest with you all here. Radar-guided missiles will be absolutely useless against the rumbling. As though they could home on to a wall titan's radar signature, they are incapable of targeting the exact point on a wall titan that is required to bring it down. Radar-guided weapons are incapable of directly targeting the nape, and hence will be counted out entirely. For the same reason as missiles, I'm going to be counting out torpedoes, as though they are capable of hitting titans as they swim underwater, in theory at least, they are also incapable of targeting the nape. Additionally, I am pretty sure that the superheated water caused by the heat of the titans will destroy torpedoes before they're able to land hits on titans in the first place. For this reason, modern submarines, which are armed exclusively with torpedoes, will be counted out of this scenario entirely. There are a few exceptions to this, as some smaller boats do have anti-tank guided missiles, and some ships do have optically guided missile systems, but they are few and far between. Roughly 5% of modern warships carry these optically guided missile systems, and that's not enough to make that much of a difference. However, modern warships have a lot of guns. Not as much as older warships, but what they lack in overall firepower, they make up in accuracy. These guns generally range from 57mm to 130mm in caliber. They are fully automatic, fire devastating high explosive shells, and are very accurate. Additionally, modern warships can carry smaller gun armament as well, including close-in weapon systems and autocannon. The main guns of modern warships will be better suited for killing titans than autocannon and close-in weapon systems. Close-in weapon systems aren't as accurate as autocannon, but have a much higher fire rate. They can fire a hail of armored-piercing and high-explosive rounds. They can also elevate very high if a Titan is too close for comfort. Though these guns are usually radar-guided, they can be manually aimed. Not all close-in weapon systems are the same. Some are larger caliber and fire at a slower rate. Some fire armored-piercing discarding sabot ammunition, and some just fire high-explosive. Some fire a mix of armored-piercing and high-explosive ammunition. In addition to close-in weapon systems, the more accurate autocannon, as I've touched on in my video on ground forces, can kill titans. Sustained fire from autocannons, if firing armored-piercing ammunition, can kill titans from almost any angle within a couple of miles. So, how will these different types of warships actually combat the rumbling? Coastal and riverine vessels, as long as there's proper waterways to operate in, will redeploy directly into the path of the rumbling and do what damage they can to the wall titans while retreating out of harm's way whenever the rumbling gets too close. Using autocannons, heavy machine guns, anti-tank guided missiles, and whatever other armament is available to them, these vessels will conduct a fighting retreat as they work their way inland through rivers, lakes, and other waterways. Others will retreat out to sea and engage the rumbling from there. Finally, these smaller vessels will likely be used to evacuate civilians out of harm's way, especially civilians from coastal areas and populated areas that rivers and other waterways run through. Blue water vessels, on the other hand, will likely be evacuated from ports that are in the path of the rumbling. These larger warships will retreat out of the path of the rumbling, and once the rumbling makes landfall, they will engage from relatively close range with their main guns, autocannons, and close-in weapon systems, as well as whatever other weapons they have that are capable of targeting the nape, such as optically guided missile systems, if available. Many of these vessels also carry helicopters, and will be able to use them to some extent to combat the rumbling. Any warship with a large main gun will fire its high explosive ammunition with what is called a fuse delay. Modern fire control systems can program shells fired by these warships to detonate milliseconds after they hit, allowing them to penetrate into, say, a wall titan a couple feet before exploding, which will cause massive damage, as opposed to firing shells that explode just on the outside of the Titan. Don't get me wrong, both high explosive shells with fuse delay and high explosive shells without will both do a lot of damage to a wall Titan, but firing shells with fuse delay will likely cause a lot more damage and guarantee a kill. Naval aviation vessels are some of the most prized ships used by any navy, and will be sailed out of harm's way to operate aircraft against the rumbling. Naval aviation vessels will be the first ships to retreat out into open ocean out of the path of the rumbling due to how important they are to a navy. These ships will allow aircraft and helicopters to rapidly strike again and again at the rumbling without the risk of operating from a land base, as land bases, especially ones in the path of the rumbling, will be at risk. Additionally, aircraft carriers and other naval aviation vessels will allow aircraft and helicopters to operate closer to the rumbling than they would be able to from, say, a land base, allowing for strikes to be launched in rapid succession. Well, that's all I've got for this video. I apologize for any mistakes that I may have made. Ships aren't exactly my thing, and to be honest, I don't really know all that much about naval stuff. That being said, this was the best I could do with what knowledge I had. The next video is going to be on aircraft. It's going to be a lot longer of a video, but it's a bit more in my comfort zone, so I think it should be a lot more high quality. Hopefully the editing quality is going to go up as well. I'm not very good at it, but I'll figure it out eventually. In any case, thank you for watching. If you got this far, I really appreciate it. Make sure to like and subscribe, because even though I'm not really trying to get anything out of this channel, I'm just doing it for the love of the game, it still does mean a lot when someone takes the time to watch these videos, so I really appreciate it, and I'll see you on the next video.